In the quiet town of Willow Creek, nestled among rolling hills and whispering pines, there lived a golden retriever named Angel. Her fur was the color of late summer wheat, and her eyes held a depth of understanding that seemed to reach beyond the ordinary. Angel wasn't just any dog. She was a hospice therapy dog, trained to bring solace to those nearing the end of their lives. Her handler, Emily Carter, a compassionate nurse with a heart as warm as Angel's coat, had seen the magic this dog could work in the dim-lit rooms of Willow Creek Hospice. Angel's story began 3 years earlier, when Emily, grieving the loss of her own mother to cancer, stumbled upon a program that trained therapy dogs for end-of-life care. Emily's mother had spent her final days in a sterile hospital room, surrounded by machines but starved of comfort. The memory haunted Emily, and she vowed to bring light to others in their darkest moments. When she met Angel, a gangly puppy with an uncanny knack for sensing sadness, Emily knew they were meant to walk this path together. Their days at the hospice were long but filled with purpose. Angel's routine was simple yet profound. She would pad softly into a patient's room, her tags jingling faintly, and rest her head on the bed, her brown eyes locking onto theirs. She didn't demand attention or bark for play. She simply was, present, steady, a furry anchor in a sea of uncertainty. Emily would sit nearby, sometimes reading aloud or holding a trembling hand, but it was Angel who did the real work. Her warmth, her quiet breathing, her gentle nudges seemed to say, "You are not alone." One of Angel's first patients was Mr. Harold Grayson, a gruff retired mechanic who had pushed everyone away as his lung disease worsened. Harold had no family, no visitors, just a stack of car magazines and a scowl that kept the nurses at bay. When Emily first brought Angel into his room, Harold muttered, "I don't need no damn dog." But Angel, undeterred, hopped onto the foot of his bed and curled up, her tail thumping softly. Emily watched as Harold's scowl faltered. He reached out a shaky hand, and Angel inched closer, resting her chin on his knee. "Stupid mutt," Harold grumbled, but his fingers sank into her fur. Over the next 2 weeks, Angel visited daily. Harold began to talk, to Angel, to Emily, to the nurses he'd once ignored. He shared stories of rebuilding vintage Mustangs, of the wife he'd lost too soon. The night before he passed, he whispered to Angel, "You're a good girl. Don't let him tell you otherwise." Emily, standing in the doorway, wiped tears from her eyes. Angel had given Harold something no medicine could: peace. Word of Angel's gift spread through Willow Creek. Families began requesting her visits, and the hospice staff noticed a change in their patients. Those who had been restless grew calm. Those who had been silent found words. Angel seemed to know who needed her most. One afternoon, she tugged Emily toward room 12, where a young mother, Clara, lay dying of leukemia. Clara's 6-year-old daughter, Sophie, clung to her mother's side, her small face etched with fear. Angel climbed onto the bed, nestling between Clara and Sophie. She licked Sophie's tear-streaked cheek, and the girl giggled, a sound that felt like sunlight in the heavy room. Clara, too weak to speak, reached for Angel's paw, her eyes brimming with gratitude. When Clara slipped away that night, Sophie held onto Angel, whispering, "You made Mommy happy." Not every moment was easy. There were days when the weight of loss pressed hard on Emily, when she wondered if she and Angel could keep going. One winter, they lost 3 patients in a single week. Emily sat in her car after her shift, sobbing into Angel's fur. "How do you do it, girl?" she asked. Angel, as always, just leaned into her, steady and warm. It was as if Angel understood that grief was part of the work, but so was hope. The townsfolk began calling her the K9 Angel, A name that stuck after a local paper ran a story about her. People sent letters, treats, and handmade blankets to the hospice, addressed to Angel, the miracle dog. But Angel never seemed to notice the fame. To her, each patient was the only one who mattered. She comforted a veteran haunted by war, a grandmother who sang hymns in a quivering voice, a teenager who clutched a worn stuffed bear. Angel didn't judge, didn't tire. She simply loved. One spring, Angel began to slow down. Her steps grew heavier, her golden muzzle flecked with gray. A vet's visit confirmed what Emily feared. Angel had cancer, aggressive and untreatable. The irony stung. Angel, who had eased so many through their final days, was now facing her own. Emily made a promise. Angel's last days would be filled with joy. She took her to the hospice one final time, letting patients and staff say goodbye. Harold's old room was now occupied by Mrs. Lillian, a pianist who played soft melodies on a portable keyboard. When Angel entered, Lillian played Amazing Grace, and the room filled with quiet sniffles. Angel lay beside her, tail wagging faintly as if to say, "It's okay." Emily spent Angel's final week doing all the things her dog loved. Walks through the pines, belly rubs, and treats snuck from the hospice kitchen. On a warm April evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, Emily sat with Angel in their backyard. Angel rested her head in Emily's lap, her breathing slow but steady. "You're my hero, you know that?" Emily whispered. Angel's eyes met hers, and for a moment, it felt like they were back in a hospice room, offering comfort together. Then, with a soft sigh, Angel was gone. The town mourned her like a family member. The hospice held a memorial, where patients, staff, and families shared stories of how Angel had touched their lives. Sophie, now 7, drew a picture of Angel with wings, which hung in the hospice lobby. Emily, though heartbroken, felt a quiet pride. Angel had done more in her 9 years than most could in a lifetime. Months later, Emily adopted a new puppy, a retriever mix with eyes that reminded her of Angel's. She named her Grace and began training her for hospice work. Grace would never replace Angel, but she would carry on her legacy. As Emily walked Grace through the hospice doors for the first time, she felt a familiar warmth, as if Angel were still there, guiding them both. In Willow Creek, the legend of the canine Angel lived on. Patients spoke of a golden dog who brought light to their final days, and nurses swore they sometimes heard the faint jingle of tags in empty hallways. For those who had known her, Angel wasn't just a dog. She was a gift, a reminder that even in life's hardest moments, love could still find a way.